Good morning, day 89 of hiking the Appalachian Trail in 100 days, and almost to the top of Snowbird Mountain this morning. It's about a 2.5 mile climb, and actually have a tiny bit of downhill now, but I think I'm not quite at the peak, and we'll have maybe 100 or 2 more feet of uphill in just a little bit. So gonna get to the top of Snowbird Mountain, and then it's a number of miles down to the crossing of I-40, and then from there we basically head up into the Smokies. At the top of Snowbird Peak here, and great view of the mountains behind us, poking out kind of a ocean of clouds below, and some other mountains over there. So got, like I said, a number of miles down to I-40, but definitely less than 10 miles away now from entering the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And of course, walking through some damp grasses this morning to get our shoes nice and wet. And there's some sort of like weather thing up here. Can't really see it much there, but in fact you can barely see it in the video because of the clouds, but looks kind of interesting. Crossing under Interstate 40 right now, and pretty much from here I think I'm about 1,500 feet of elevation, and from here the next 5 or 10 miles are just a big climb all the way up to like 5,000 feet or so, so that should be fun. Crossing over the Pigeon River right now. Nice little river there. So crossing Davenport Gap here, and I believe this marks the entry into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Didn't see any sign, so maybe there'll be a sign somewhere up here. And similar to the Shenandoah National Park, you have to have a permit, backcountry camping permit. And for normal people who are just going to be camping in the park at some of the shelters but aren't doing the AT, it's $8 a night, and you have to reserve spots at the different camps or shelters. But if you're doing the AT, they have a through hiker permit, and for that you can just buy the permit for $40, and then it's good for like up to 30 days or something, I think, and you can just be in the park and camp at whichever the shelters or campsites you want to, whatever nights. But you are supposed to, for everyone, stay in the shelters and like not tent unless you're a thru hiker and all the shelter spots are filled. Then you can pitch your tent. But I'm only going to be in the park 3 nights, and since I have a schedule planned out, I know what shelters I'm going to be at what nights. So I just went ahead and bought the regular permit, not the AT through hiker permit. So that way I only paid $24 instead of $40. So technically I'm supposed to sleep in the shelters. Not sure if that's really enforced or what. So not sure what I'm going to do tonight. It is another milestone that we're kind of reaching today is that it's September 1st, and it's Sunday, September 1st. So typically Sunday night probably wouldn't be very busy, but it is Labor Day weekend, so Sunday night might be more busy. So we'll see if the shelter's crowded or what tonight. And another sort of milestone we just crossed is that I now switched over to the last map section on Far Out, which is exciting. There's about 9 or 10 sections, so I'm on the last one, which is about 240 miles worth of trail. So getting close to the end, but day 89, so still 11 days after this one. So we're getting close to the top of the big climb for today, but some absolutely epic views here already. I think we're around 4,500 feet, so a little bit more to go to the top of this mountain, and then we will have a little bit of descent actually. The trail has been fairly nice on the whole. A little bit of a rockier section here, but hasn't been super steep either, so that's been a plus. Still been able to maintain a fairly decent pace at around 2.5 miles an hour, and I think a little bit faster than that, but definitely a minimum of 2.5 miles an hour, so I'm pleased with that for sure. So a little bit after 1 o'clock, and finally had some flatter terrain and a little bit of downhills over the last hour, but we're headed back up now and have just over half a mile to the Cosby Knob shelter, where I'm going to stop for my lunch break a little bit later than normal. It'll be around 17.5 miles in. So after that, I'll have just under 8 miles, but we'll still have a decent amount of elevation gain. I think a little bit over 2,000 feet after that lunch stop. So I've definitely done a fair bit of the miles and elevation for today, but still have a decent bit left. That will be probably a little bit over 3 hours of hiking. So looking forward to that. We'll be getting up over 6,000 feet after the break, and we'll be having some nice views as well from what I see. Just after 2 p.m. now, and about 7 miles left to the campsite for tonight, and should have close to 2,000 feet of elevation gain. Got a little bit of a downhill section now, and then we'll be going up over 6,000 feet and then back down a little bit just below 6,000 feet where we'll be camping tonight. So I think this campsite will probably be the highest elevation I've camped at on the AT so far, and that includes the Madison Spring hut. I think that hut was somewhere between 5,000 and 5,500 feet, but I think this campsite tonight is around 5,800. But it's kind of foggy out. I guess there isn't really much fog around right now in the vicinity, but just a few minutes ago there was some, and just can't see out much through the trees, but it is pretty cloudy out there for sure. You can definitely tell that. So I believe this little open area here and a little piece of concrete used to be a helicopter landing pad up here at 6,000 feet or so. And there's some decent views there, but lots of clouds as well, and the clouds are kind of blowing over the mountain here into that valley. So a little bit disappointed we don't get better views today, but hopefully the weather will be a little bit better tomorrow, and especially Tuesday, as we will be going over Klingman's Dome on Tuesday. Man, these trails and woods and this mountain and everything, the moss, it's so picturesque. Just absolutely beautiful, I think. And just before 4 o'clock now. I think I got about 2-ish miles left for the day, probably a little bit less. And it's mostly just flattish and then some downhill. So it shouldn't be too difficult. And it has kind of been sprinkling just a tiny bit on and off last maybe 20-ish minutes, but haven't bothered putting the pack cover on because my pack's been kind of damp today just because I've been sweating a lot and it hasn't been hot or sunny, so it hasn't been getting dried out, so the sweat just kind of seeps into the pack. So it's the next morning. Didn't end up recording a summary video last night just because I was at the shelter and there was a bunch of people there. And I did get to the shelter right after 4:30, so that was pretty awesome. I was surprised how quickly I was moving at some points yesterday. And I was at the Tri-Corner Knob shelter, which is at mile 1973.7. And it did rain after I got to the shelter, probably around 5:30, I think. And it kept up pretty good, probably till about 7 or 7:30. So I ended up just staying in the shelter. There weren't any good tent spots either. I could have probably figured something out, but I ended up staying in the shelter. I think there was probably 6 or 8 other people in the shelter, and one of them had like a hammock set up inside the shelter, so wasn't too crowded, had plenty of room to myself. And most of the people went to bed, you know, around the time it got dark, which is when I was going to bed as well, so wasn't too much of an issue. And in terms of history, from 1973, I think that was the year that President Nixon resigned. I think there was some other stuff notable in that year, but nothing's really coming to mind. So that's all I got, but let me know in the comments. I'm sure there'll be lots of other interesting things people can come up with using either their own minds or the internet and searching. But pretty good first day in the Smokies. Definitely am looking forward to tomorrow, which is today when I'm recording this video, and some better weather and better views.